to this first session, the global Keynote Debaters. We have the Global Leaders Debate in two parts. First, we have the Keynote Debaters, and then we will have a second panel, which is a little bit more operational. So you're getting the macro picture, and then you're getting a little bit more of a micro picture. So global flows of foreign direct investment fell by 23% in 2017. Cross-border investment in developed and transition economies dropped sharply, while growth was near zero in developing economies. With only very modest recovery predicted for 2018, this negative trend is a long-term concern for policymakers worldwide, especially for developing countries where international investment is crucial for sustainable industrial development, as per the latest World Investment Report issued by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD. Given the current downward trend in foreign direct investments, the global leaders here will debate and discuss the impact of digitization, robotization, and technology, in other words, the so-called economy 4.0. Has on development. So the session will look into the opportunities and the challenges this new brave world creates for investment and especially also for development. In that sense, I would like to start the panel. We will have, just as a little, telling you a little bit about the proceedings. We will first have this panel where everybody will speak very shortly, answer two questions. We'll have an interactive debate. Then we have a keynote address, and then we will have the panel number two. So, first of all, Your Excellency, Mr. Minnikhanov, I've had the pleasure and the honor of chairing you several times by now. And you are always, your wealth of information, and I always learn a lot from you, as does the audience. So in your view, to what degree has the economy 4.0, it has digitization, robotization, AI taken root in Tatarstan? And have you been able to provide the platform for companies, investors, to bring in the benefit from these technologies? Do they create jobs or rather reduce them?
Ассаламу алейкум ва рахматуллахи ва баракату. Добрый день. Хайырлы кім баразғада. Я буду говорить на русском языке. Я представляю один из промышленно развитых субъектов Российской Федерации, Республика Татарстан. Она расположена 800 километров восточнее от Москвы, и основная часть населения, которое проживает, а население около 4 миллионов, это мусульмане. А что касается цифровых технологий, технологии 4.0, я должен сказать, что это приоритетный проект не только для Республики Татарстан, в целом для нашей страны Российской Федерации. Из 12 приоритетных национальных проектов цифровая технология входит в этот приоритет. Она включает в себя как нормативное регулирование, сами цифровые технологии, подготовка кадров, безопасность, работа с промышленным сектором, работа с государственным сектором. И, конечно же, наш регион также подключился к этой работе. Какая инфраструктура? Прежде всего, это специальные площадки, это особые экономические зоны Иннополис, где и университет, и который нацелен на эту работу, и другие наши высшие учебные заведения. И, конечно же, очень серьезное внимание мы обращаем в воплощение этих направлений в нашем промышленном секторе и также в госуправлении. Поэтому 4.0 потребует очень большой работы. Мы активно воплощаем эту идею, готовим людей. Надо, конечно же, чтобы каждый гражданин нашей республики имел цифровую грамотность имел ту инфраструктуру, которая позволяет ему использовать. Ну и, конечно же, цифровые технологии – это новые вызовы.
So in other words, it's education, education, education. Can I ask you another thing, which is how much can you benefit from the scope and scale of the Russian Federation, which has some wonderful universities? You have great universities, they have great universities. How much can you benefit from the scope and scale of your big and beautiful country?
Ну, конечно же, цифровые технологии полностью поменяют всю экономику, всю систему госуправления. И здесь, вы правильно сказали, основная часть нашей работы – это подготовка кадров. Мы начинаем со школы, есть специальные IT-классы, где есть специальные центры подготовки, то есть ресурсные центры, где мы готовим, подготавливаем кадры. Ну и, конечно, вся инфраструктура высшей школы, она должна быть нацелена на подготовку специалистов, там, big data, там, цифровые технологии, использование в промышленности, в социальной сфере. Эта работа требует больших знаний, большой подготовки. И, конечно же, те вызовы, которые стоят перед нами, вот те исследования, которые были проведены к 2030 году, где-то 260 профессий у нас появится, 50 профессий исчезнут, и к этому надо быть готовым. Сегодня, конечно, мы особо пока еще не видим этой проблемы, но в ближайшие 5-6 лет уже мы ожидаем, что нам необходимо провести ту работу, которая позволит нам интегрироваться. То есть, во-первых, это 5G. 5G – это совершенно новые возможности, и у нас в пилотном режиме в нашем городе Иннополис эта система работает. Также я должен сказать, что уже более полугода в этом городе работает беспилотные такси. То есть я не знаю, где еще работают, но вот в нашем Иннополисе работают. То есть мы активно работаем с молодежью. Вообще очень важно, чтобы вся система образования она была пронизана и нацелена на то, чтобы молодые люди получили те компетенции, а те специалисты, которые уже сейчас работают, они должны иметь возможность получить дополнительное образование. То есть весь процесс образовательный, он будет постоянный.
This is excellent. So you are preparing for the brave new world, and we all never quite know what the brave new world is getting us. Now I have the honor of introducing Mr. Mukhisa Kituyi, who is the head of UNCTAD. Your Excellency, UNCTAD has released a study on digital globalization in the autumn of 2018. It's actually a very, very good piece of work. I would recommend it to all of you to read. It predicts that cross-border trade and finance flows will stabilize at about 2017 patterns, but that cross-border data flows will grow at an exponential 3.5 times between 2017 and 2021. We are right in the middle of that period. Would you care to comment?
All right, thank you very much. Really, there are two processes happening at the same time. Over the past 10 years, we've seen production networks shift from tangibles to non-tangibles in shorter value chains. At the same time, there's slowing down in global value chain investment. There is declining return on FDI. Mm-hmm. And importantly, we are seeing trade tensions translating into investment protectionism. So these explain a slackening and almost stalling of traditional financial flows, investment, and trade. On the other side, we're seeing the exponential growth of the digital economy. We are seeing, for example, just between 2015 and 2017, global e-commerce rising from $26 trillion to $29 trillion. In 2017, of the 1.3 billion people who are shopping online, 21% were purchasing from abroad, compared to 15% in 2016. So this phenomenal growth of electronic commerce, partly abated by the fact that the digital giants can surmount the traditional challenges of finance and trade. For example, they have a light production footprint globally. They can carry on exponentially expanding business with limited staff and stock assets. And then the ability to not only generate, mine, and monetize data, but to bypass hurdles like financing challenges, embrace of new technologies like blockchain technology, which are crossing the hurdles to the traditional economy. These are the dynamics that are informing a massive expansion in the data economy, even at a time when factors are slowing down the traditional movement of investment and trade.
And what does that mean for developing economies?
For developing economies,
how can they galvanize, those efforts, and how can they make sure that it's not just Mr. Amazon and Mr. Google who benefit?
All right, that's important. I think the world cannot afford to make the mistakes we made with globalization, to just say that leaving market forces on their own will fix social problems. There has to be concerted international and national action. First of all, every developing country must identify the gaps in its preparedness, what we call the digital divide. Have they invested in the 21st century regulatory framework? What are the privacy laws and data protection laws and consumer protection laws? How do they match skill development with the requirements of the digital economy? How are they investing in quality, competitively priced digital infrastructure like a fiber optic and the logistics of delivery? So the entire chain of investables that create conditions, the ecosystem, to get on board is important. But most importantly, it is demonstrated that with a sound policy mix and investment practices, both developing and emerging economies can seize new opportunities that come with the digital economy that are not tied to the burdens that they have suffered in the analog economy.
Can I just follow up with one very short question for one very short answer? When you look at sub-Saharan Africa, what you saw with the electronic payment systems with the phone, it basically leapfrogged ahead of OECD countries. Can you see similar patterns maybe emerging? Is there a chance for that?
Yes, in our work around the world, both in Central America, in Costa Rica, in Africa, Kenya, Rwanda, South Africa, and increasingly now Egypt, we are seeing the possibilities of young digital tigers and tigresses, or lions and lionesses, who are seizing on the opportunities that come with the digital economy to do things that they have not been doing before. But I think it's also important. I come from the land of M-Pesa, but this notion of leapfrogging, to leapfrog, you need a solid foundation to jump from. There is still need for investment in skills. There's still need for clear public policy, international cooperation for creating the infrastructure to use the opportunities of the digital market. But lastly, digital capacity to trade is a vehicle for trading. It does not totally generate the value to be traded. So building productive capacity cannot be sacrificed while you're building the possibilities of engaging in e-commerce. Otherwise, you'd just be an e-importer.
That's excellent. And I think that's such a nice segue to the Islamic Development Bank. And Mr. Sejiny, I've just met at the Islamic Development Bank annual meeting, which just took place in Morocco, who had a great private sector forum. And this was a nice cue for you. So, how do you see the economy 4.0 change the nature of foreign direct investment in your countries? I mean, that's very good to sort of follow up on what His Excellency Mr. Kituyi just told us. Over to you, Mr. Sejiny.
Sure. It's basically the 54 member countries that we have, lots of them have digital economy definitely part of their strategies, and some of it goes much faster than other economies that have been already developed because they have less luggage to carry with them. At the same time, they have the possibility and capability to adapt faster. They have, most of them, phones and digital accesses. At the same time, they have already thought about putting in the regulatory requirements. Now, the education is definitely needed. On the other side, you will find a lot of 4.0 strategies applying into those economies and knowing how to strategically invest faster and much more efficient. And they would know exactly in each country what is the competitive advantage and how to utilize the 4.0 world into those economies. For example, if it's agriculture, they would know which agriculture would bring the highest returns, and that's where the investment is going to go into, and how the big data will help how to distribute it. Who are the economies that would like to benefit of the supply? Who is the demand? And how the artificial intelligence will calculate for you all this big data into the best use. So I think the opportunity is big, and the need is going to be much more targeted.
That's fantastic. And, we've discussed that already in Marrakesh. What about the jobs? Do you think, I know you have very strong views on this, do you think the brave new world of the economy 4.0 will destroy jobs or will it create jobs, net-net?
I mean, you hear a lot of news and a lot of worries of people that 4.0 is going to get a lot of jobs to be lost, but it's going to be creating a lot of jobs, and it's going to be much faster than ever before, in my opinion. Because once you have a much more productive, a much more efficient supply chain, let's say, and much more benefits of understanding who is the demand or where the demand is, this means that businesses are going to be flourishing much better and much faster. Hence, I do believe that we will be experiencing a better job market, a much more strategically keen market. You will find a lot of people moving from one job to another job much faster and trying to learn. And I think it's going to be a journey where constantly people will keep on upgrading themselves, updating themselves, knowing what is the best way to conduct their businesses. And they will be able to move much more dynamically from one thought to another thought in order to apply what is needed.
Do your member countries have the educational possibilities to get the young ready for this brave new world very, very quickly?
Sure. The interesting part is that youngsters automatically love technology. And when you see them using their phones from a very, very young age, they adapt very fast. So the training programs that is needed in order to get them to come on board is going to be also a very fast track. Through probably apps, and it's going to be through media and technology.
And you would know, you have 6 children.
Yes.
So we are going to Mr. Adewale Tinubu, who is the Group Chief Executive of Oando, which is one of the foremost upstream independents in West Africa, in Nigeria to be precise. What opportunities does digitization pose in your industry, and how are you able to capitalize on those opportunities?
I think the oil industry is probably one of the most biggest beneficiaries of digitalization. I mean, we've seen global oil resources go from over 25 trillion barrels of oil equivalent to 45 trillion as a result of technology. We've seen shale oil deposits. We've seen the U.S. go from a 5 million barrel a day producer to an 11 million barrel a day producer, the largest oil producing country in the world, in excess of excess of Saudi Arabia today. That's simply as a result of technology from hydraulic fracking as well as other aspects of technology. We've seen resources, for example, where independents like our capacity to recover has greatly increased from seismic imaging and other technologies which are entirely digital. And we've seen costs drop substantially by 25% as a result of technology. In Africa, for example, we're getting advantages like floating LNG, where you can build a whole processing facility on a vessel, which gets produced or manufactured offshore, where it's safer from an economic risk perspective. It's floated in location and connected to an oil field, thus increasing our capacity to plug into an increasing resource and get increased shares of foreign direct investment. It's already been launched. There's one floating LNG facility in Cameroon today, $1.2 billion investment. We're deploying drones for security and for repairs of pipelines in Nigeria now, which is primarily all about digital mapping. And we have a substantial amount of technology-enhanced means of recovering resources in our environment today.
And to what degree? It's very good, and I spent a lot of time of my life in the oil industry as well, so I couldn't agree more with you. But to what key areas should African governments focus on in terms of creating the policy framework to get the countries ready to embrace, this brave new world of the economy 4.0? You're there on the ground, you see the things that go well, you see the things that do not go so well. So what is your sage advice?
I'll break it into two issues. One, the software, which basically means that we need to have ease of doing business, the capacity for companies to register, to engage, to get licensed, to operate, data protection. There's no point doing innovation if the fruits of your labor are being copied and sold off. Clearly, ease of doing business, like I mentioned, is critical. And then on the hardware side, infrastructure. If there's no bandwidth, then it's very, very hard for companies to innovate and take advantage of the global opportunities. Example, Nigeria has done very well in creating a very strong regulatory framework for bandwidth and the telecoms business. We launched in 2000 via a competitive tender, and we already have something like 120, 130 million phone lines in the country. Most people's first opportunity of even watching the TV today is actually on their smartphone today. And so we have fixed the infrastructure side, and we continue to do so. But as the chairman of UNCTAD said, the real key is to crash the prices of bandwidth. Without cheap, available bandwidth, then there's not going to be much scope for the benefit of innovation or the benefit of global e-commerce being a thing which we should take for granted on the continent, particularly as we will leapfrog technology as we currently do on the continent.
It's very good. I mean, it's a very fascinating conversation. Now, this panel is going to be a little bit cut short because we started late and we have a keynote address in between. But I think it would not be fair if we didn't ask questions, if we didn't let the audience ask questions. It's very rare that you get such brilliant people all in one, and you can ask them questions. So I will take, I think, with the permission of the organizers, and I'm sure they will tell me when I'm not permitted anymore, I will take 2 questions, and they'll get the answers, and then we'll sort of have to wrap up. So who would like to ask a question? The gentleman back there. There's a gentleman in the last row of the front section. Could you please identify yourself by name and organization and ask a very brief question because we want to hear the wisdom.
Thank you very much. My name is Pavel Mayorov, the head of corporation development of Krasnodar region. That's the southern part of Russia where the Sochi Olympics were. My question to the speakers is the following. What investment opportunities do you see in the digitalization of the governmental services if you see any investment possibilities in your countries or in your regions, is it possible to attract private investment into governmental services or governmental authorities in gaining profit out of that? Not just private business, but governmental services as well. Thank you.
I think we're going to go to UNCTAD and we're going to go to the Islamic Development Bank, if that's all right with the other gentleman for that question. UNCTAD first.
All right. Thank you. Traditionally, it has been the business of government to fix infrastructure. But where we are today with ambitions of Agenda 2030, government should be a facilitator for private sector investment. And so the digital infrastructure for e-government and for e-processing of services, whether it is automated management of customs services or tracking of cargo across borders, can be outsourced to the private sector. And we're seeing the possibilities massively, not only of private-public partnerships, but for government to privatize public services like registration and monitoring, which have been traditionally done by government, can now be let out, and these are opportunities for net entrepreneurs to walk into.
And Islamic Bank?
Again, governments are very much focused now on private business, SMEs, and with the big data, they will be having artificial intelligence capability to really focus and direct where they really need to give the best time and the most efficient time and find out what is the competitive advantage of their countries. In this way, they can really flourish much faster, enhance job creations, and at the same time, take their GDP to a higher level.
Excellent. So maybe we go for the second question. Does any of you have anything? I think it was comprehensive answers. Would you care to comment?
Well, I think the only point I'd just like to make is that take obvious things. Africa, very large population. The benefit of digitalization means that we can simplify a lot of our processes. So for example, one of the key things is just merging a database of passports, driver's licenses, births, registration in Nigeria. That's over 200 million people to capture. In the same vein, if you look at things as basic as civil rights, democracy, there's a time when people are going to be able to vote from their smartphones in the next 5 years or 10 years. I think that there's such a massive revolution that the digital age creates for the African community, because indeed we get the best technology launched as a first opportunity for us. If we take something as basic as financial technology, fintech, the African banking system is, on a technological basis, actually more advanced than what you have in Europe, because we're getting launched. The first 4.0 versions is really what is actually becoming the first base platform, electronic platform, which people are utilizing on the continent. So it's actually quite an exciting time for digitalization on the African continent.
So I guess that gives us time for just one more question. Do we have somebody who would like to ask a question? The gentleman over there in the second row, gray-haired gentleman in the second row, could you please get a microphone? And again, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, I will do.
Thank you.
I'm Mahmoud Suleiman from Egypt. I'm representing the Federation of Egyptian Industries. I would like to ask questions for the panels. There is any time schedule to transfer from the traditional economy to digital economy, and what is will be the ratio between traditional and digital economy in the future?
Okay, time frame of transition, that's a tough one. I guess UNCTAD is well placed to answer that one.
All right. The speed of integration into the digital economy is driven by the purposefulness action of entrepreneurs and governments. 2 years ago, the government of Egypt came to us and told us, we want your assistance. We want in 10 years to be the leader of e-commerce in Africa. Over the subsequent 1.5 years, with the funding from MasterCard, we did a national strategy on the digital economy for Egypt. But see, that is driven by public purposefulness. It cannot happen accidentally. But then also, digitalization does not kill the traditional economy. It builds efficiencies, creates new service values, new opportunities, and faster ways of strengthening productivity. So there will be a few dislocated enterprises, but it is not transition from the one to the other. It's bringing the other to the digital age.
It's interesting, and I'm just one sentence from you, Mr. Sejiny, because you have this great 500 million endowed fund, which is supposed to bring innovation to where it's most needed, to SMEs in your member countries, because SMEs are the guys creating the jobs. It's the job of big companies to use the scope and scale of the corporation and get fewer jobs.
Yes, more or less it goes extremely fast, in my opinion. The target whereby you will find lots of information where the supply of any production of requirements that you have or the demand, it will be connected for your factories or if any businesses or let's say garment or even agriculture, healthcare, it's cross-board and it can happen extremely fast because it is supportive and it does help. And that's the way how it will increase all businesses and jobs.
Fantastic. So as we have to, as we are sort of on a tight time frame, I would ask you all, starting with His Excellency, the President of Tatarstan, to just give me sort of, if you have to say this brave new world, now for you, what does it mean for Tatarstan? What does it mean for UNCTAD? What does it mean for Oando? What does it mean for the Islamic Bank in one sentence? If you can just give me this nice little soundbite. Your Excellency?
Но если я вопрос правильно понимаю, что нам необходимо, чтобы 4.0, они дали реальный результат. Это прежде всего, мы должны обучать людей. Это самое главное. Вот мы совсем недавно собрали все наши промышленные предприятия, пригласили лучших экспертов нашей страны и провели семинар, как этот процесс будет происходить. Большие крупные компании, они, конечно же, способны, уже сегодня воплощают. Где-то, я думаю, более 30% предприятий уже активно работают в этом направлении. Но надо вовлечь малые и средние предприятия, поэтому это одно. Второе – это государственные услуги. Воплощение здесь цифры – это качество обслуживания населения, это и медицина, это и культура, это и образование. Поэтому это жизненная необходимость, и цифровизация 4.0, она в корне изменит качество жизни населения.
Thank you. You should really talk to Mr. Sejiny and his brilliant. I love you. I love the. It's not your part of the bank, but I love the idea of this $500 million innovation fund. For you, in one sentence.
Yeah, we are on the cusp of a major phenomenal transformation globally. But the digital phenomenon cannot be a panacea of social injustice issues. Mm-hmm. Inclusion requires that we look at what levers in international cooperation can help those who are being left behind to get on board. Governments, entrepreneurs, intelligentsia, and public intellectuals have to work together to surmount some of the challenges that come with the new possibilities. Challenges of abuse of privacy, challenges of unfair monetization of private data, challenges of cross-border movement of goods, but importantly, challenges of inclusion. I believe it is within our means not only to ride the opportunities of the digital economy, but also to use it as an enabler for Agenda 2030.
That would be good. And that was actually the whole theme of the Islamic Bank's annual meeting, which was SDGs and global digitization. Mr. Tinubu, from a private sector perspective, one sentence.
An estimable opportunity. I see the capacity for people in my own industry to be able to produce oil at a much cheaper rate, take less financial risk and better return. And from a macro perspective, for the continent I come from, Africa, I see the opportunity of leapfrogging years and years and centuries of physical infrastructure to one where we use an e-infrastructure to develop the continent. Let's take something as basic as books and libraries. And you think of all the international institutions of learning that physically exist. Today on our continent, that learning will be dispersed by electronic manner, giving people, over 1 billion people, a chance to be able to leapfrog many, many years of physical learning. And think of health, think of logistics, think of all the opportunities which we'll get from the benefits of a 4.2 digital economy.
Thank you. And Mr. Sejiny, you get the second but last word, because I'll do a little summation.
Right. I think it's going to be an extremely exciting world that we are entering into. It's very important for partnership and definitely communication and connectivity and collaboration between all the stakeholders, whether they're governments or corporations, artificial intelligence, big data, robotics, and all of them should be able to communicate with each other and really build it together as one future. And education on top of that will make it very fast.
So I will just do a very short summation. What I've heard is that Tatarstan is really getting ready. I mean, you're educating your people to make sure that they're ready for this brave new world. And I heard from UNCTAD, you know, we need to focus on the value chains. We need to make sure that countries have the infrastructure. And what I thought was very, very important that you said, Mr. Kituyi, was that you need to build that stable foundation. That can be digital infrastructure, it's education, it's everything. Yeah, I very much was impressed by your call for inclusion. So to make sure that it's not just Mr. Amazon and Mr. Google that benefits, that it's a broad-based benefit. The oil sector obviously benefited a lot from this economy. And if you only think of, you know, the data flow that now comes from platforms onshore, and we need fewer people in dangerous places, and floating FLNG, floating LNG. So the whole shale revolution in the US, so the industry benefited very much. But you also mentioned that, you know, you need that digital infrastructure. You also said, you know, Africa can actually leapfrog. If you look at African banking right now, with the fintechs, they're going further than anywhere else. And the thing that I really take from you, Mr. Sejiny, is that this new revolution, if done right and if done inclusively to the point of UNCTAD, is actually going to be a major enabler and a major creator of jobs. So the futures out there can be bright if we go about it the right way. So on that positive note, could you please give a hand to all of these wonderful panelists from whom we all learned a lot?